Just a very quick word on a big project that the Financial Times has been working on for the last 3 years. We've set up a financial literacy charity at the newspaper. It's called FLIC, Financial Literacy and Inclusion Campaign. Obviously, people who read and subscribe to the Financial Times, as you can imagine, have high levels of financial literacy, well, we would hope. But they also have high levels of financial influence. And one of my jobs as a trustee is to convince the financial industry, policymakers, educators about why this is important. I know we're preaching to the converted today and that you already know how important it is, but we want to bring to your attention examples of best practice on this panel, what different countries, what different organisations across the member states are doing, those concrete details, as the Commissioner said, that actually make a difference. So I'm going to start with an icebreaker question for each of the panel quickly to introduce them, starting with Daniela Marconi, who is the Head of Division Director General for Consumer Protection and Financial Education at the Bank of Italy. Now, Daniela, you have a particular responsibility for young people in your role at the Bank of Italy. Just tell us a little bit about that before we crack on with the panel.
Sure. Thank you very much, Claire, and I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me here. So yes, my division and my team, we work on designing financial education programs for young people, so people going to schools. We work a lot with schools and universities. But let me say that my team also is, work on the collection of data on financial literacy for the Italian population. And so we collect the data, we analyze the data, and we also perform evaluation, impact evaluation of financial education programs run by the Bank of Italy.
Fantastic. Well, welcome, Daniela.
Thanks.
Now, next to your left, we have Maija Nykänen, who's the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Finland. Now, Finland has a very ambitious mission. By the year 2030, you want to be the most financially literate nation, not just in Europe, but the world. Tell us more.
Well, it was 2020 when the Bank of Finland initiated the development of a national strategy of financial literacy for Finland. Now the strategy is ready and it's overseen by the Ministry of Justice, but the Bank of Finland is a key partner in its implementation. When we put our vision in the strategy, we wanted to make it challenging and we wanted to aim high. And it's not a top-down strategy, and the aim and the goal and target is not top-down either. It was agreed together and in cooperation with the stakeholders who were participating in creating the strategy. The aim of our strategy is easy to remember. It also commits all the actors and the stakeholders to act efficiently and also in good cooperation. And I have to say that our target has aroused a lot of discussion, and both nationally and internationally. And I would say that if we would have a target, would have had a target of being number 25 in the world, I think that there would not have been that much discussion. So this number one is easy to remember, and we want to reach it. So that's and I will tell some of the initiatives that we have taken. Thank
Fantastic.
you.
I look forward to hearing them. There's some really, really good work going on in Finland. Now, next we have Katarina Ivanišević. She is the Director for Social Rights and Inclusion and sits in the Directorate General for Employment at the European Commission. Now, Katarina, we talk a lot about disparities, about inequalities when it comes to financial services. Tell us a little bit more about recent evidence concerning the gaps in financial literacy in Europe and who the most vulnerable groups are.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting DG Employment to take a part in this important conference. I think it's quite relevant for us from many perspectives, just to mention the social protection and the biggest part of the social protection, which is pensions, and then we can speak later about pension literacy as a part of the financial literacy. But first I have to say I'm quite impressed with Finland, because I don't know if you are aware, but Finland is the only country in the European Union who has managed to suppress homelessness in the whole EU, for example. And I really admire the way that ambition is set and then led towards the achieving. So looking forward to follow you closely to see if I don't doubt that the goal will be achieved, but when exactly. So coming back to the inequalities when it comes to the financial literacy, there is a lots of evidence, I would dare to say, that there are quite a big disparities among the different groups. And there is not only among the different groups, but the financial literacy in the general public, I would dare to say, is quite challenging topic for us. It's a majority of the people either fall within average or low knowledge about different aspects of the financial literacy, be it like in the OECD, who has done in 2020 the international survey on adult financial literacy, or more recently the Eurobarometer, which I believe you all have seen. It's quite interesting and super short and quite telling as well, which shows that there are significant disparities among different groups. And it will not surprise you at all who these groups are. It's mostly visible within the younger cohorts, which I have to say is quite worrying, because our systems, and especially the pension system, is still relying on intergenerational solidarity. And if, for example, younger cohorts do not understand how the pension systems are filled in and how the pensions are paid, and we have a big problem. Women of all ages, this is I would dare to say, particular interesting phenomena, because now when we speak about women, we usually have the perception of some gaps, like employment gap or pay gap or pension gap, which are all interlinked. And then we have recently we started speaking about the care gap, which became so prominent with the COVID crisis and everything that was exacerbated after the COVID-19. And I would dare to say that we could speak about financial literacy gap, gender gap, and this is something that I believe all of you as those dealing with different aspects related to financing and financial literacy should, and us as well, take into account. And then the groups with a lower level of education or belonging with the lower levels of education consequently the different low-paid occupations, they are the one that are most, I would say, vulnerable when it comes to the financial literacy. And I can elaborate later, but two things that I think are also very relevant, for example, when it comes to the pension literacy, majority of people have two problems. One is that they do not have a relevant info. And the second thing is when they have the relevant info, that it's too complicated, so they simply do not understand. And I'm really sorry that I have to be so blunt, but among all the information, surveys, etc., that we could dig, these two elements really strike us as the most visible tool.
Yeah, in my column, I often say people get their pension literature and they put it in the drawer. Don't know what to do. I'll stuff it away. I mean, I use social media a lot to educate people about pensions, and I don't use the word pension. I use the term free money because people understand that. If you sign up for the pension, you get free money from your employer, free money in the form of lower taxes. And that is a message that gets through, but very, very good points. And also on the issue of care. I mean, the cost of childcare across Europe, but particularly in Britain, I mean, this is something that is causing female readers of the Financial Times to have to borrow money. It's so expensive, so a really, really big issue. Now, last but not least, our token man on the panel, everybody, we're very glad to have you with us today. It's Dieter Korczak, who is the president of the European Consumer Debt Network. This is an organisation that works very hard to improve access to debt advice across Europe and help consumers who are struggling with problem debt. Now, of course, the experience that we've had of the pandemic and the cost of living crisis, you're working across 24 separate member states in Europe. How has the nature of problem debt changed in the last few years? What are you seeing on the ground?
Yeah, thank you for the invitation as well from our side. Maybe I just add our complete title is European Consumer Debt Network for Fighting Over-Indebtedness and improving financial inclusion. So it's a very long title. That's why we just known as ECDN. But it's important, and especially when I see these headline, Money Matters. Since 2007, we publish our magazine, which is called Money Matters. And when you are going and visiting our website, you will see what we have. There are 19 issues now, and there you get a lot of information about financial education and the fight against over-indebtedness. I agree to everything what has been said this morning and was just said now, but I just want to make another point. We follow the Nobel Prize winner Amartya Sen when he said that people have capacities and capabilities. And I think the financial literacy goes more to the capabilities, tries to improve the capabilities, but we think it's very important to improve the capacities as well. What do I mean by capacity? I like very much the citation of the commissioner about wealth is health and health is wealth. And that's true because we see the 40% of each society. In some societies it's more, in some others is less, of people who don't have enough money, who belong to the one who cannot survive 3 months when there is a financial shock. And they usually are financially very literate because they manage to survive with a very low income, with a very low budget. And therefore we could see that life events, critical life events like the COVID-19 crisis, where we saw a lot of new over-indebted target groups, like the handicraft people you mentioned, small entrepreneurs, people of the middle strata of the society, and we see a lot of gamblers. Don't forget the gamblers, because people were sitting at home, and what did they do? They gamble with the TV, with shows and so on. So we have new target groups for advice, and therefore I think we should look at the circumstances of everyday life as well, and especially to use the language which so-called, you said John and Mary, the people from the street understand, because they don't know what is inflation. They cannot, for them inflation is something in the sky. So we need a different language to approach them.
Okay, well, thank you. Some great points there. Now, we're going to skip ahead slightly in the questions that I sent to you before the panel, just because we need to make up some time so that we have time for everybody's questions. So we're going to go on to policies now. Policies that address some of these problem areas that you've all spoken about to boost resilience. There are lots of items in the toolbox. There is regulation, there is innovation from the industry, and there is education. There's also digital, which is a double-edged sword. What have you each found to be the most impactful? And we'll start with you, Daniela, talking about Italy.
Thank you very much. Let me say that not a single item can do the trick. So innovation is very, very important, of course, but we need to govern innovation to bring inclusion and protection. So innovation can produce enormous opportunities. We heard also in other panels today to address vulnerabilities, but it has to be governed in a way that produces shared benefits. An example, we have innovation hubs. The financial inclusion and protection perspectives must be always be on board when we design innovative financial products and services. Then regulation is very important. It's fundamental to make sure that financial services providers more and more design products and services that are really in the best interests of consumers. So Here the idea is to have protection by design, as also indicated in the EBA guidelines on product oversight and governance. But of course, this is not enough. There are products and services which are not covered by regulation or only partially covered by regulation. Let's think about crypto assets. Also, we know that the best regulation does not provide for full protection, so it comes financial education. Very important is another pillar to have, self-protection and awareness. So we need financial education at this time, especially better digital financial education, as we also, some of you stated today. And financial education means also the ability to access information and opportunities in a complex financial system. So we need to have, a mix of policies and make sure they are coherent among themselves.
Okay, and just to jump ahead to Dieter, now we've spoken about buy now, pay later, BNPL, another area which the financial regulation is playing catch up. And this is something that you're seeing very much on the ground, but also policies that could help. The funding of free debt advice across Europe, I know, is another big topic for you.
We are very happy that the Consumer Credit Directive number 2 was set in force last November. We think this is a huge approach. This is like landing on the moon for our area, for our free debt advisory. And in this Consumer Credit Directive, there are 2 chapters which are for us of special interest. It's Article 34 and Article 36. Article 34 says that the member states have to improve financial education. We agree, as I said, totally. Financial education is like swimming, driving, a car, biking. So it's something it's everyday life skills. Debt advisory is now statutory and should be implemented. And debt advisory can help a lot and has to be funded. And this is really already now my word to the commissioner. I talked to many ministries because we have this fantastic PEPI project, which was funded, giving a grant by ISMEA, where we tried to prepare the provision of debt advisory services in 13 member states. And I talked to quite a lot of ministries in these member states, and they said, yes, we don't have this big problem. Many people in our countries are quite well off. And yes, we will start. We have time until 2025, and then we will start with the implementation and the transposition. And we always said, this is far too long. Please use what we have done in the last year as a pilot project, develop this further, and especially buy now, pay later. When you see the figures in 2019, before the COVID crisis, there was $80 billion revenues for buy now, pay later schemes. In 2022, it was 200 billion, and for 2024, it said 400 billions. And we know by all our information from our member organizations that buy now, pay later has a very big risk for people who are not so skilled, who don't really check that, it's so easy. Buy now, pay later, don't mind, don't think about it. And in the UK, 1 of 10 persons who have used this buy now, pay later is already client of self-collection and getting into insolvency. So this is something, it's regulated in the CCD2 as well, but this is like in Hungary. In Hungary, we have a perfect national strategy for financial education on paper. It's not really set into force, and this is so important. The action should really follow what it's written in strategies on paper.
Just to share one thing, the big debt charity in the UK, Step Change, somebody has come to them and they have found that she had nearly 50 separate buy now, pay later agreements for different things. So it's very, very easy for consumers to keep saying yes. Often mental health is a factor, another vulnerability. But anyway, moving on to Finland, because there are lots of policy changes that you're bringing about there as a result of your strategy, your ambition. Tell us a little bit about some of the concrete policy changes that you think are helping.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. What I would like to take up is that what is very important in our strategy is to focus on those groups which are most vulnerable, and I think that those groups have been identified here already. But the key thing here is that we have gathered a network of 80 stakeholders who work together under the idea of improving the financial literacy in Finland and according to the strategy. This network includes relevant ministries, NGOs, public authorities, and representatives from banking and financial and education sectors. So the cooperation is crucial, and I think that what is very important there is that the work is coordinated so that we avoid overlaps, but on the other hand, we don't overlook any of these vulnerable groups. But one concrete thing that we have done in Finland is that in 2022 we established a financial literacy center at the Bank of Finland Money Museum. And that has been the mission of this Money Museum or this literacy center is to improve people's interest in financial issues, and also to make this kind of financial education, what is happening, taking place there, more concrete. So the main target group is of course young people, but then we have a lot of people coming from different workplaces, and also senior organizations are very frequent visitors in this museum or in this center.
Because of course people who are older, in their adult lives they may not be vulnerable, but then when they reach retirement,
then they might become.
Exactly.
And we have to remember that when we talk about financial education, of course school is very important place, but we should acknowledge that those skills that we achieve at school, they don't last the lifetime. So I think that we have to understand and acknowledge that financial literacy is a skill that you need for your lifetime. It's a lifelong skill. So then it's very important to meet and identify those situations and contexts where you find adults, working places, trade unions, libraries, child health centers, and so on. But regarding these concrete things in this literacy center, we have educational games, we have interactive displays, and we also on more economic issues like inflation or interest rates and that kind of things. And we also organize these workshops mainly for students and younger people, but as maybe to our astonishment a little, also these senior visitors have been quite interested in those workshops also. Thank
Excellent.
you.
And also, I like the concept of a money museum. The Bank of England also has a money museum, and I joke to them, with cash becoming a rare sight in shops nowadays, this is the only place in the future that children will see cash in the museum. But you have a whole panel devoted to that this afternoon. Now, Maya made some interesting points there, Katarina, about the role of employers. Education doesn't stop in the classroom, and we are at the Financial Times urging employers to conduct financial well-being as part of modern life in the workplace, to educate people about their pension. It's where they're earning their salary. It's where they can start investing in shares in the company they work for in many places. But what policy change would you be interested to tell everybody about here today that could help that?
Well, it is very difficult to speak about one policy change because we have seen that it is a complex phenomena. And for example, for us in DG Employment, it also has maybe slightly different understanding that maybe some other parts of the Commission. But what is very relevant for us is that we always have to pay attention and take care of those who are most disadvantaged, who are at risk of poverty and social exclusion, and that's how we do. And for example, I don't know, I always ask, do you know how many people have heard about European Pillar of Social Rights? Could you raise?
Okay.
Good. Good. It's
About
quite
10% of the audience for those watching at home.
It's 10%.
yeah. Maybe some are shy, so they don't want to raise the hand.
It's just 10%.
So, the European Pillar of Social Rights was proclaimed in 2017 in Gothenburg, doesn't matter really, but has 20 principles that are guiding the European social policy in the widest sense: employment, skills, social inclusion. And the Pillar Principle 20 is particularly relevant for the financial aspects and for the topic of the today, because it says that everyone has the right to access essential services of good quality. And then it speaks about water, sanitation, energy, transport, financial services, and digital communications. I would dare to say that two of the last are somehow interconnected and quite important when it comes to the access to essential services. Year and a half ago, we have undertaken the first assessment at the EU level on the access to essential services, including also this aspect of the financial services and information gathering. And it was quite visible that people who are at risk of poverty and social exclusion have been have felt that they are completely excluded. And there were three reasons that they highlighted for it. One is affordability, because the at-risk households, they spend around 60% more of their budget on essential services than the rest of the households, which means that their purchase power is much lower, and which means that they do not have a huge margin on when it comes to the overall spending. Then the other one is the lack of skills, which they highlighted. They simply do not have the access, especially to the digital communication and financial services. And then the insufficient structure, which means that the access of the essential services is affected also by some other factors, like geographical or location-based factors, or the fact that people do live in different parts of Europe, like in remote areas, islands, not to mention, etc., etc. But what are we doing on the policy dimension, and what matters? We are actually doing quite a lot. But the question is always, do we always adequately reach the end beneficiaries? That's the question that we should ask ourselves. And I believe in the other panel you will be discussing a lot about young age and about schools and financial literacy education, that indeed should start there and should be much more comprehensive and should be much more overarching, I would dare to say, and adapted to the different age of children. And it doesn't have to wait for the secondary education. It has to start much earlier.
Agreed.
And we even promote the kindergartens education. And we have seen some countries that pilot the financial literacy aspects with really children between 3 and 5 or the school-age children. So and it really it's quite important. It's quite relevant. And then it should be stepped up. I have to say, I really do worry about young people cohort, which is, well, now it's up to 35 or whichever age, which is always scoring extremely low in all surveys and all the ways. So what do? We have so-called Action 8 of the European Skills Agenda, which aims to build the skills throughout the life. It's really lifelong learning. And it does include the elements of developing the financial literacy and financial literacy skills. It is done in various manners via social partners, as our Finnish colleague mentioned, but also via different grants and then the different organizations, associations provides. Then we have a European Agenda for Adult Learning, which is facilitating our European cooperation in this area and has also elements of the financial literacy there. Then we do have a so-called financial competence framework, which was done jointly with OECD in 2022. It's within the OECD International Network on Financial Education, where these financial competence have been discussed and agreed, which are targeting the adult population. So it's not the whole cohorts. And then there is something which was established in 2023, which is called the Framework for Children and Youth, and it's public. You can find it on our websites. And also this one was done within the Capital Markets Union 2020 Action Plan. So our colleagues from also DG FISMA and different other DGs, including DG JAS, dealing with children and children's protection, have done it. It's quite interesting. It's almost like a toolkit. So you can really use it as you go with your different programs. And then just to mention three actually elements. One is the Structural Reform Support Program, which has also this possibility to use the funding for the different aspects of the financial literacy. And then we do have 4 member states that have a specific, we call them technical support instruments, which is practically the technical assistance to the member states implementing different reforms. So 4 of them are targeting, among other activities, financial literacy. It's Poland, Greece, Portugal, and Cyprus.
Bravo.
So quite interesting. The projects have just started, so there is a bit of a way to go, but very good to follow it. And then last but not least is the European Social Fund Plus, which within the social inclusion window, and every member state has 25% for the social inclusion, has the possibility to increase this literacy. And this is something that we encourage member states to do it, and do it on a more permanent base than just the project related, because we all know that those activities that are project-based most of the time ends when the project ends. And with financial literacy, we see it as something that has to be continuous and that cannot be linked. You can pilot, you can socially innovate, you can have some ideas and implement, but it should not rely on the project-based principle. That is a really strong message that we are sending from DG Employment.
Well, thank you, Katarina. I hope that's been useful to the audience to hear about all of these different policies and initiatives. A very interesting summary. So before we go to questions, because we do have time for some questions, I just want to talk briefly about how else we're trying to reach people and spread the word about financial literacy. Television is one way, social media is another. Now, I know that in Finland and in Italy, you've been doing lots with TV adverts. Tell us briefly about what you've been doing.
Yes, well, I think that TV is a good media, maybe for elderly people and us middle-aged people. But I think that we have to acknowledge that younger people, they don't watch TV, at least not linear TV. That is our experience. So I think that we have to, in a way, identify the right media for the target group we are trying to reach. And then if we talk about younger people, I think that it's about social media, it's about Instagram, it's about TikTok, and they don't want to read long brochures or long documents on financial literacy. It has to be brief, it has to be visual, short videos and that kind of things. I think that we have to notice that the world has changed also when it comes to information sharing.
Well, one statistic that the director of Flick told me is that 40% of Gen Z, that's people who are aged 21 and below, roughly speaking, 40% of them will look something up on TikTok before they will look it up on Google. It's becoming the repository for so much
Google
information.
Is for old people. That's what my son tells me.
Yeah, I'm an old person too. And do we have anyone who would like to ask? Oh, we do. We have lots of questions.
People.
Brilliant. Okay,
Yeah.
The person with the microphone, the lady in the middle in the maroon dress, smiling with her hand up. Excellent. Fire away.
Thank you very much. Is it on?
Oh, there's another one.
Thank you very much. My name is Anna Martin. I'm from BEUC, the European Consumer Organization. I have one question, given actually the complexity of the products we are talking about. And we have been discussing a lot financial literacy, but where's actually our financial advice? I mean, when I'm sick, I'm going to the doctor and I get medical advice. When I have a legal problem, I'm going to an independent lawyer getting legal advice. And when I'm over-indebted, I get to the network from Dieter getting debt advice. But also when I want to invest, I'm actually stuck with bank salesperson or crypto influencers giving me not so good advice. So my question is, where is the independent advice? And next to the Wikifin, do we actually get soon also a DocFin, which gives us independent financial advice? And do we get with the Commission an inducement ban which will enable us to develop this financial advice? So this is my question. Thank you very much.
A great question. The availability of advice and also the differentiation between advice, investment advice, guidance, lots of different legal implications there. Who would like to come in first on this? Dieter.
Thank you for your question. I have to make a little bit advertisement for ECDN. We regard us as counselors, not just as advisors, but as counselors, which is a more holistic approach. And we have on our website and all our member state websites, consumer websites, we have question and answers to a lot of questions regarding financial management and living with debt. So people can get advice there. And we intend to make this year podcasts because we think podcast is a very good channel. And the general problem is, as I said before in our discussion when we prepared this meeting, it's a little bit like the fairy tale of the hare and the tortoise. So the financial industry is always faster than we can be as advisors and counselors. And therefore, we think the financial industry should be much more involved in funding, debt advisory, debt counseling, and we have an idea that for each loan they are giving, they should pay a small levy, let's say 0.1% of the loan for financing and funding, debt advisory and financial advisory. So we have to look for new models of funding because the governments will not always pay everything which has to be paid or which is needed. And we think, like when we have been in Bulgaria, we met the ombudswoman in Bulgaria, and she just told me, yeah, what you are intending to do, this is chapter or Article 20 of the Pillar of Social Rights, and I will engage myself in Bulgaria, which is a very difficult country for these questions, that debt advisory, debt counseling, financial literacy is promoted more.
Sure. Okay. Well, great answer. I know Katarina wants to say something. I would also say the role of AI in this, particularly for young people who want financial advice, who have relatively simple financial affairs, is something that I'm seeing really take off in the UK. We're very interested in what's called the advice guidance boundary, and the Financial Conduct Authority is looking to formally move that to give firms in the industry more confidence about what they can and cannot do in terms of educating us about concepts like compounding, which we have seen in your questionnaire, that we've seen measuring people's competencies. We do get taught about compounding in British schools, but it's always as a mathematical concept and not as a monetary one, not something that can make us richer, not something that young people understand, even if they can only afford to put away small amounts of money consistently into investments over time, they can snowball into something much bigger. I don't think that should be a message that we're regulated against passing on to young people, but until the regulation is there, firms and employers are very nervous about telling employees to invest into a pension or being seen to mandate that it's something that they must do. But Katarina, your point.
Well, I wanted to bring in one aspect that we have seen quite a lot, especially discussing the pensions with the different member states. And but this in general, I think, could be linked to your question, and that is that it's quite difficult to know to whom you could trust. And I think trust is the key element in addressing and looking for an advice on how to invest and how to use what you have. And this is something that is quite challenging, especially, for example, when we would like to promote more supplementary pensions, for example, in especially certain cohorts which could benefit much more for, let's say, supplementary pension savings. But then we have the whole Central and Eastern Europe, for example, where the supplementary pension schemes, I would, failing would be a really tough word to say, so I'm not going to use it, but have lots of challenges, and people do not really trust to those who are communicating or who have been behind the reforms and who are there. So that's one element. The second element is that there are so many ongoing reforms in various fields, not only the pension, but also you're dealing more with the finances, that it's difficult to grasp what these changes are, and then even more difficult is to translate it to language that is understandable to us all.
Yeah.
And that is definitely one of the part of equation when it comes to the difficulty in getting. I don't have the magic solution. Maybe a pilot of an easy to understand financial literacy would be something best or something that one could look into. But it's also very, very important to have this independent aspect when providing financial advices and financial information. And then the artificial intelligence is so fast. I told my son last week that I'm going to this conference, and then he says, so what are you going to tell people, like what they should do? I said, no, Gergur. He's 18 years old. I said, no, Gergur. But he says, you can ask ChatGPT in which bonds to invest. And I was like, no, you can't do it. So we did. And then he asked, in which bonds should I invest now? And then, I don't want to advertise, but it's a beer factory. And they say, you should invest because their bonds are record low. And this summer you will have the Olympic Games and some other championship, so it should increase. So these are the information. And then he looked at me like, oh, this is such a good reasoning. So is this the sound advice? I think it's quite challenging to grasp what is this fun, gadgety approach to what is real investment. So
yes, well, I wasn't expecting investment tips on the panel today.
ChatGPT.
A really, really good question. We'll take the next one in a second, but finally, you wanted to come in, Maya, on
yes,
this.
Just to mention briefly that I think that one part of the financial literacy is to be able to be critical towards the information that you get and understand that the bank advisor might give a good advice, but it might not be the best advice for the customer. So I think that you have to be aware of
Kick the
that.
tires,
yes,
as we say. Sorry, Daniela.
Yeah, just very quickly. Yes, I perfectly agree with you. And financial education is also about, learning which are the most reliable sources of information for your question on investment or savings or planning or whatever. And what we do, for instance, working with the public television is, of course, going through the most relevant topic in this moment, that trouble people, maybe, about buy now, pay later products, scams or other, issues. And one very important thing we always say is about trustworthy sources of information. And we also have a website, where, in simple words, people can refer, and they also find the links, to go to trustworthy sources of information. It's
brilliant.
Key.
Now, we have another question at the back, and then we'll come and take some from the front. Fire away.
Thank you so much. Anna Maria Romano, Unifinance President, which is a global trade union representing 3 million worldwide finance workers, and working at global level with these matters since many, many years ago.
Brilliant.
Mrs. McGuinness said that people working together get better results. So my question is today, where is workers' voice here? Workers are a crucial part of financial value chain. I mean social and strictly financial value chain. Don't you think a severe neglect, this absence here, also connected to consumer needs, as the previous one asked for? Customers trust and ask us, mostly the more fragile ones ask us, when we have the possibility to have a good relationship finance. So we are also a source of good information. So we should be part of the discussion because money matters when people matter first.
Exactly. I mean, I think a very good point that we need to have human interaction as well as the evil chat bot, which we frequently come up against. Who would like to come in? Daniela.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to come in because I would like to bring a very nice best practice. I think we are putting in place, working with union representatives to bring financial education on the working place, especially for women. We have, this program was meant especially for women, and we are working with the women union representatives. As the Bank of Italy, we have this program training the union representatives that then, bring the financial education program in the workplace, targeting women particularly, but of course, not only them. And thank you, this is very important. They are a very important partner.
Okay. You wanted to come in?
Yes, just a quick, because some of you may have heard that recently we had so-called Val d'Uches Summit, which was about the social dialogue, and actually reinvesting and reinventing in a way the social dialogue at the EU level, where indeed the trade unions and employers have agreed together with the Commission about the number of principles to respect. And I do believe that, and we do have a quite good cooperation with the trade unions at the EU level. Of course, we deal with the umbrella associations and the aspect of the financial literacy. I'm pretty sure is the one that trade unions are, and ETUC in particular, promoting. Therefore, the understanding and always has to go when something is discussed and reflected at EU level, that it's transposed to the national levels and not only national, local and regional, which is equally important. But I also do believe that in this part, when it comes to the workers, for example, and the general public, the civil society could also play an important role, and the different associations, organizations could have maybe quicker, more direct interaction with the general public in particular.
And I have to say, personally, as a journalist, an area I'm really interested in reporting about within finance is customer service. The level of customer service that different organisations are giving customers in different areas of need and vulnerability. This week I'm writing about dementia, and how families with dementia find dealing with the banks, which is a huge problem in the UK, and I suspect in England, in the rest of Europe. I say this, so if you want to come up to me at the lunch and talk to me more about these things, then please do. Do we have time for one more question, possibly two? Oh, fantastic. An author.
Hi, my name is Susan Hayes Cullerton, and I wrote a book called Money Matters and distributed it with the help of CFA Society Ireland into all of the secondary schools in Ireland 3 years ago. And the one question that I have here is, all morning it's been really, really interesting to talk about what young people should be learning. But I would just like to ask, are we asking what young people want to learn? Because what I find is that, like, for example, Claire, you talked about compound interest over time. A 16-year-old can only see 10 days ahead. They can't imagine exactly what this time would be. Or when we talk about helping them to understand pensions or free money, as you say, they haven't even got into the jobs that we're encouraging them to retire from. So therefore, I do wonder, and I would just love to hear from you all, is that what are you doing to listen to young people in the first case? And the second thing I just want to ask as well is about talking to teachers. Because within the book, we had many focus groups with teachers, and they told us three things. One is that they wanted the interdisciplinary nature to relate very, very clearly to the subjects taught for exams. The second thing was to minimise preparation, because they have to do that for a lot of things. And the third thing is exactly what Anya said, is to make it relevant and fun and interesting. So I'd really love to hear those two stakeholders. As Commissioner McGuinness said, she's been weaving together a group of stakeholders here today, and I'd love to hear what those two stakeholders have been saying to you. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Absolutely great questions. To give you a little bit of time to think, I'll kick off by saying I go into schools in Britain a lot as part of my work with Flick, and what young people want to know more about than any other topic is how to get rich as quickly as possible, because we've heard on different panels our worries about young people, about how tough they're having it, about the level of student debt, about the level of medical debt, gambling debts, all kinds of problems, the cost of housing. All of these things are conspiring against them, and so naturally they think the only way out is to find a way of getting rich quickly, and for many of them it's crypto. So I get asked lots and lots of questions about crypto. Sort of in the last year it's been more like, will my crypto ever come back, because I've put money into it and it has gone down. And so that's why I try and teach people about compounding and the power of doing a small thing over a long period of time, because to combat this feeling of hopelessness. Like, I've only got a tiny amount of money, what can I do with it? And the younger that you can get to people, the younger that they can start learning about how these actions can help them. We heard from the Bank of Ireland earlier about saying the most useful piece of information that people had was learning about how something they could do as a teenager could impact their credit score, their ability to borrow money, buy a car, get a mortgage, much later on. So I think that credit scores, credit cards, borrowing money, buy now, pay later, these are all hot topics in schools as well. But we'll go to Dieter and then to Maya.
Yeah, I guess too many people have seen Mel Brooks' history of the world when he's saying it's good to be rich, and they believe it. But we made a survey with Polish and German students aged 14 to 16 and asking them what they want to be taught in school regarding financial questions. And they told us we want to know how we can finance a driving license. We want 14 to 16. We want to know how we can buy a car, and we want to know how we can make additional money. They were not interested in retirements and pensions and leading a household book or getting a credit. They were not interested. They had these, as you mentioned, these very close to their living situation related questions.
Maya.
Yes, thank you. I think that the children and the school students might be a bit biased if you ask them what they would like to learn. But I think that one thing which would be interesting is to listen to them and how they would learn those things. And there, I think that our experience now in this financial literacy center in our Money Museum tells that when you make it concrete, when you make it interactive, when you make it interesting. And we used to have there in the old days, we used to have this kind of inflation monster. It was put in the closet for some time, but now we took it back again. So this inflation monster is there again. So to say that what would you do if you be the Ministry of Finance in Finland for the not so young children, but teenagers, and how soon you would get the country or company bankrupt? So that kind of things. I think that it's to make it concrete, make it practical, and make it interactive. I think there are many ways, and I think we should listen to them.
And Daniela, what are you hearing?
Yes, I very much agree with what she just said. And our experience, we work with teachers. Okay, and then we ask, and then we ask for feedbacks from teachers once they run the programs at school, financial education program, and they say that especially, children from very young age, from 16 to 19 years old, they all excited about financial education because it's practical. It's very, I don't know if I can say in English, it's like a laboratory. They can experience real life.
Adulting. people call it.
Yes. And so, so the feedbacks are very positive. We also had, an impact evaluation of financial education program in school, and it works. It works especially because it's important to work through teachers. So it works because we train the teachers. So it's very important to channel this information through teachers because they know how to do it. And it's also very important to listen to children, and we did just the last thing I want to say. We just ran a survey asking questions to young people going from 18 to 34 years old in Italy, and the youngest part of the sample, those from 18 to 23 years old, they said clearly that they would like to learn about economy and finance, more practical things for their personal finance in school and at university. So, we got the feeling they are very much interested and engaged, and if the methods with which they learn these things is the right one, they learn really.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. Thank you for your questions. If there are more questions that remain unanswered, then please come and grab us at the lunch. And for now, please join me in thanking our wonderful panel, Dita and Maya and Daniela and Katerina. Thank you very much.
Thank you.